This is the fourth year in which Doordarshan is organizing this interactive session with the Finance Minister, Mr. Jaitley. We will take questions coming in on social media from viewers and present them to Mr. Jaitley for his response. So, if you have any questions, please send them to the hashtag #AskYourFM. Hashtag #AskYourFM. That's where your questions should come, and I'll get a selection of those questions and put them to the Minister. This program is going live on Doordarshan News and also on the social media platforms of the International Broadcasting Ministry. So, Mr. Jaitley, first congratulations on your fifth budget. The first question I have before us is from Mr. C.U. Venugopal, who asks a specific question. Sir, has the conveyance exemption of 1600 per month and the medical exemption of 1250 per month been removed and replaced with the 40,000 standard deduction? Then the net benefit to the salaried class is only 5,800 annually.
You see, originally you were getting a conveyance benefit which was much less. In fact, I had increased it to 1600 2 years ago. And the medical benefit is not available to everyone. It's only available on basis of actual expenditure.
Yes.
There are a large number of government employees who get the CGHS benefit, etc. And it has come into experience that most people then used to get into the business of getting bills. Now, some may be fair, some may not be fair. And this was leading to a practice. All private employees don't get the benefit of the conveyance itself. Pensioners, for instance, who are also included in this, don't get the benefit of either transport or medical, because they have to look, as far as medicine is concerned, on their own, unless they are covered by some insurance scheme. Now, in lieu of these two, one which they were some employees were certainly getting, the other was an uncertain one, the medical one, a 40,000 benefit to start this whole concept of a standard deduction. I think what should be appreciated is the philosophy behind this. When I analyzed the data, I broadly found that 1.88 or 1.89 crore people were paying income tax in the salaried circle, identical number almost in the business professional circle. The salaried circle was paying 1.44 lakh crores as tax. The business professional circle is paying only 48,000. The difference is 3.5 times. And therefore, we felt that we must bring back the principle of standard deduction. And to start off, it's a 40,000 deduction. Irrespective of what you spend, you don't need bills, you don't need to show any evidence of actual expenditure. So whether it's a class group D employee or a group A employee, a private or a public employee, or an employee in any category whatsoever, he gets this 40,000 flat.
So basically, the tax exemption limit goes up by 40,000.
It goes up by 40,000, and if I put it another way, the total benefit to the salaried class in this is 8,000 crores.
So it's quite a lot.
And that's a substantial amount. And therefore, an individual who's being able to claim transport and medical allowance fully may get a marginal benefit, but those who are not able to get it
will get a substantial
benefit. And I think the lower the level of the employee, the higher is going to be the benefit in this case. The younger the employee, the more is the benefit in this case.
Okay, the second question is from Himanshu Sharma, and he asks, what is the logic behind no tax change for salaried people? Business people do not show, I think he has not heard your answer. Business people do not show their real income, therefore don't pay taxes. There's no real
I think let us first of all take the last 4 years in totality what I have done for this category. I increased the limit from 2 lakhs to 2.5 lakhs.
Yes.
In the first instance. 2 years ago, I said after you pay 2.5 lakhs in the lower category, the next 50,000 will remain tax exempt. So if you have a 3 lakh income, you don't pay any tax.
Yes.
So effectively for the lower category, the exemption goes up to 3 lakh. The third thing I did was up to 5 lakhs last year, I brought down the rate to 5% so as to nudge people to get into the tax net.
Yes.
And 5%, mind you, is the lowest slab anywhere in the world. India is the only country which has a 5% slab. Then I increased the house loan to 2 lakhs from 1.5, which is 50,000 increase. I increased ATC by 50,000. And this time I have increased it by 40,000 for the salaried. Then for senior citizens, I have made another set of increase.
Yes.
And therefore, if you see the totality of these increases that I have made and one looks at this whole package, then anybody with anything between 5 to 7 lakh income annually, that is a 50,000-60,000 month income, can actually end up paying very little amount of tax, provided he plans his tax properly.
The one question would be that you jump from a tax slab of 5% directly to 20, when logically there should be an intervening slab of 10%.
This was an issue that came up last year, that therefore there will be a tendency to hold on to 5 and the resistance to move up will be there. We are studying this pattern. 1 year is too little a period to study the pattern, but my own experience has been that all this nudging exercise that we've done, coupled with some strict action of anti-evasion that we've taken,
Yes.
the number of taxpayers is increasing.
Yes.
And therefore, people who slip into the higher categories will automatically also go up. Also, don't forget that the impact of GST is also going to be on direct taxes. If GST becomes accountable online, then obviously it will also reflect what your direct tax incomes are.
Yes. Yeah, understood. There is a question from Deepak Rishi, which says 90,000 crore personal income tax collected due to drive against black money. Is it true?
Well, if you actually see the collections, I have given the jump ups that have taken place. Normally, it used to be 1.1% was 1.1 was the buoyancy. Now the buoyancy becomes 1.9 and 2.1 in the last 2 years. The number of taxpayers has increased. The quantum of tax has increased. And therefore, on both these counts, I think the direct tax department is doing well. I don't think I would have been anywhere close to the 3.5% fiscal deficit if the direct tax had not made up for it.
Yeah.
Because the GST was still early days.
Yes. In fact, your tax to GDP ratio has gone up from 10% in the last year of the previous government to 12% now for next year. And I think that is an all-time high.
This is an all-time high, and I think both direct taxes and coupled with the anti-evasion measures that we will take in the GST itself,
Yes.
I think will also have its impact.
Okay, and the next question is from Karthikeyan Selvaraj. He says, as a common man, I can't tolerate the daily hike of petrol and diesel prices. Do you think that's acceptable? And I could not accept it because of the crude oil price. The price of crude oil in 2014 was $96 and 2017 is $52.
Well, I think first of all, the crude oil price today is almost about $70. The figure $52 is not correct. And therefore, I think the questioner must get that figure right. But let's be very clear. What happens to the taxes collected and how many taxes are collected from crude oil? A part of the taxes are collected by the center and a part of the taxes are collected by the states. And therefore, first of all, we must all bear in mind that there is a large part of taxation which is also collected by the state governments. I'm not blaming the state governments for it. But when the prices went up, we took an initiative and reduced the price by 2%, the excise duty as far as the center was concerned. We expected the states to reduce it. Some of the BJP states reduced it. The others who otherwise talk against petrol price hike, the Congress government, the 3-4 of them, and the left front government in Kerala, point blank refused to reduce it. So let's be clear on that. Secondly, what do we do with this extra money that comes in? Now, this is the money which we are using for infrastructure. We can see for ourselves that these 7 lakh villages in India are getting connected by road. You are having some of the best national highways, globally comparable, which are being built across the country. You are having today airports being built in almost 125 to 150 cities in the country. If this is the level of infrastructure creation which is going on, I don't think there are too many other countries in the world where the infrastructure is being created at this level. And most of this money is actually going into the infrastructure. And therefore, I think we will need a body of citizens which rationally understands that even though it's a troublesome thing to pay a certain amount of price which is higher, but then those who use petrol and diesel in their vehicles also drive on roads, and therefore somebody has to pay for the roads. And the only way a government can pay from the roads is taxation.
Taxes. But I have a question on that and the direction of expenditure increase, which is that increasingly your money has gone into the physical infrastructure and not into the social infrastructure like health and education. And even in this big new medical insurance program you've announced today, there is no budgetary provision.
No, there is a nominal budgetary provision we made from 1st April onwards. This year we've sanctioned an amount of 2,000 crores, and we've said that any additional amount will also be made available. Also, remember that this extra 0.1, this 1% surcharge,
yes,
is really the infrastructure, is really the health and education.
But it doesn't show on the expenditure side.
No, but this is an amount which we will make certainly make available on this. And the whole idea is that once the scheme takes off, we'll have to see, because large volumes leads to a lesser amount spent per capita as far as the insurance is concerned. Now the total modalities of the scheme, whether it's in a trust format or in an insurance format, will now be worked out. And this money is going to be spent. And I do hope that this scheme succeeds, because if this scheme succeeds, in one sense, it will be one of the greatest social security programs in India.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because otherwise, India has been quite alien to this whole concept of social security.
But, is there a figure of 25,000 crore as a likely expenditure level?
I don't
realistic?
think it's possible for me to speculate at this moment. This idea has been mooted essentially by the Niti Aayog, and those who deal with healthcare in the Niti Aayog have done a detailed study.
Oh, okay.
In fact, you have a healthcare expert in the Niti Aayog, yes, who deals with public health, and therefore he's done a detailed study, and they did a study on the basis of making it universal. So instead of making it universal, in the first instance, let's make it available for 10 crore people, and let us see how it works in the year one.
How will you select them?
You see, there is a socio-economic criteria on basis of income which is available. So you pick up the 10 crore families which are the least at the bottom of the ladder.
Or the lowest ranked.
The lowest ladder. So the poorest 10 crore families, which is almost 40% of India, gets the benefit in the first instance. And if this scheme succeeds, let's assume, because I have now also provided for additional revenue measures. The long-term capital gain is an additional revenue measure.
Yes.
The 1% cess is an additional capital revenue measure, and therefore I think there is and this year I think the surprise package in the coming year after the anti-evasion measures is going to be the GST. The first year was teething trouble. So take a combination of the two. I don't think monies would be a problem. Whether it's X or X into 2, we'll certainly try and make a success of this scheme.
Okay. The other question is now from Saurabh D. It says, what would be the actions against the profit gained from cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin in terms of taxation?
No, you see, the cryptocurrency is not a legal tender in India. But if you earn profit, even from an illegal activity, it is still taxable.
Yes.
Merely because the activity may be illegal, but profit certainly adds to your income. And under the Tax Act, if it is proved that it is earned from an activity, legal or otherwise, it certainly would be taxable.
Okay. And then Aarti Agarwal, I'm afraid our country is heading towards rich getting richer and poor getting poorer. The salaried professional is paying for corporate tax holidays. Please clarify how your scheme for salaried professionals is increasing jobs.
Quite to the contrary. If you see, let us see the totality of what is happening for the poor. Let's take both social sector and rural India, because that's where most of the poverty in India is. You are now having a scheme which is succeeding, where every village gets connected by road. You have been able to provide almost electricity in every village. You are very close to providing electricity within every village to every home. That's the next step. No, that's 4 crores we have said this is what we are going to provide.
Okay.
That's the next step. You are now on way implementing a housing scheme. Your sanitation program from 36% has moved up to 76%. And therefore, if you see the quality of your Ujjwala scheme, 3.5 crore gas connections becomes 5 crores, now becomes 8 crores. Your right to food, the cheap food which costs us 1,50,000 crores a year as far as the budget is concerned, but we are successfully implementing it. So I think your Manrega for the complete jobless, I am maintaining the 55,000 crore figure in the budget. So from that job to the food, to the housing, to the gas connection, to the sanitation, to the road, to electricity. Now these are all areas which in the last 7-8 years, and let me forget the political complexion of the governments in power, the Indian society is moving in that direction, and these are all coming from those resources. And I have already just explained in an answer to an earlier question that as our base is increasing, certainly in either by way of some form of deduction or by exemption, we are trying to make sure that some benefit reaches the middle classes also.
Yes. I have a question on the Ujjwal scheme, where the economic survey said that about 20% of households which have got these gas connections are not using fresh cylinders.
I think
other data journalism has come out with numbers saying that number has gone up to 50%.
I think in any such scheme this would be a challenge. You see, when you provide toilets.
So the issue is the cooking gas cylinder too expensive for them?
No, when you provide toilets, then you have to change habits of people that they use toilets and they have to have the water supply to use the toilets. Similarly, when you provide a cooking gas cylinder, you must then get them and nudge them into the habit of then acquiring a refill as far as their own capacity is concerned. I think this will also get related into changing habits of people, and with the DBT as it picks up in various other schemes, the spending capacity on these essentials may also slightly increase.
Yeah. Okay, Rituraj Singh, you have not created, what is that, 70 lakh jobs in the last 4 years. How could it happen in next 1 year?
Well, I think, you see, when you look at job creation in India, first of all, the authentic data of formal, informal sector, etc., one has to look for. You see, if you are an economy which grows at 7 to 8%, there is some element of job creation which is certainly going to take place in the economy. And I think with the kind of scheme some of us have implemented, particularly with infrastructure creation, the Mudra scheme, etc., I think the opportunity of job creation itself in the society has gone up. Otherwise, to say that jobs are not created in the society, we would have had a mass kind of social unrest in the society if there are no jobs.
You do have some unrest.
No, you have unrest, but you have unrest which is which became more caste-centric in some areas. And you had unrest which was also farmer-centric.
Yes.
And therefore, that was the area which was to be addressed.
Okay. Satish Bachu, it's a good budget indeed. However, what is the motivation for taxing mutual funds?
Well, I think I think the question relates to this whole long-term
capital gains.
Capital gains. You see, this is a decision which has been now pending for years. And you see, the Indian economy has grown. There was a time where you needed money to come in from wherever the money would come in. So you allowed the Mauritius double taxation treaty, you allowed Cyprus, you allowed Singapore, and all these treaties to go on. And finally a stage came where, oh, if you revoke these treaties and rewrite these treaties, the investment will dry up and not a rupee will come into India. I remember like those famous editorials you will remember that if India does a nuclear test, not a rupee of foreign direct investment will come up. Some people had said, and they were proved wrong. Similarly, when we rewrote those treaties, it didn't have a ripple effect at all. In fact, the round tripping stopped.
That more money is now coming in.
Now, from a taxation point of view, I looked at the figures. 3,67,000 crores was the exempted income of the last assessment year on the long-term capital gains. Now, bulk of this came from large investors. They could be domestic, they could be international, they were corporates, they were LLPs, they were FIIs and so on. Now, the rationale of not having enough money in your kitty to support your social sector schemes, to support infrastructure, to borrow and spend. But this is a section because this is the money you need to come into the equity market. There was a time you needed it, and therefore the markets have matured. There are a lot of domestic investors also in the market. And we took a conscious decision that up to 1 lakh rupees we will exempt.
So the small investors.
The small investor doesn't have to pay. And if you earn more than 1 lakh as a long-term investor, then you don't pay 15% that a short-term investor pays, you pay 10%.
Oh, I completely endorse it. And I think it helps to address some of the inequality issues in society as to who gets a benefit of the growth.
And most of the beneficiaries of the long-term capital gain were the wealthiest.
Yes, that's the point.
And therefore, a tax, you see, I remember 2 years ago, Arvind Subramaniam writing subsidy for the middle class and subsidy for the rich. This was a subsidy for the richest.
Absolutely.
And therefore, to withdraw this subsidy for the richest and divert this money for a healthcare scheme or for a farmer's MSP, you ask me where will this money come from? I think both MSP and healthcare can be supported only out of the long-term capital gain taxation.
And you've done it in a non-disruptive way. So
and because I had made a commitment that I will not make it retrospective. So I said whatever you earn till the 31st of January 2018 will not be taxed.
Yeah, so the market's taken it.
And it will be taxed only for the future.
Yeah. So the question, you mentioned MSP. Are you going to now sharply increase Kharif procurement prices?
You see, it's now a matter of calculation. I think what I have announced today is the principle. And this principle had two logics to it. One, I think it had become an aspiration because the farmer was suffering. And therefore, somebody of the eminence of Dr. Swaminathan writes a report.
Yes.
Now, what will be the base value of the cost, I think, is an issue which the Agriculture Ministry will sort out after analyzing this report and seeing the market conditions. And then try and fix the price. After all, we have been increasing the price gradually. All governments have been over the year. How much far away are from it? But there is bound to be some increase if at all it takes place. And I think we'll have to get the revenue to meet that cost because that is not a permanent solution, but that certainly is a better solution than a loan waiver.
Absolutely.
Because a loan waiver will just take you in for a few days and then after a year or two, the loans will mount up again. Now, here he is now assured, and this will be a great precedent for future, that you know how much you are going to pay. It may have some impact on consumers, but I don't see the impact going to be very huge.
But aren't you worried about inflation? You've raised the taxes on a lot of electronic items. You now raise the price of food.
As far as the tax,
oil has gone up.
As far as the tax on electronic items is concerned, we have only, after consulting the ministries, selected those items which are domestically produced. And therefore, if you were to say, is it a protectionist measure? Probably. Because you need domestic job generation also, and therefore footwear, television sets and parts. Now, these are all items which are being manufactured, automobile parts, which are being manufactured domestically. And therefore, the domestic prices are not going to change. It's only the competing product which may become 5% or 7% costlier if somebody brings it from outside. You have a cheaper product price. So, that may not necessarily be inflationary itself. But this may have a marginal impact. But I think the system will try and absorb this. Because I think the competing need of preventing farm suicides, of giving a decent quality of life to the farmer, I think also is equally important.
Okay. Prem Prakash, how will the fiscal math be correct for the government with rising oil prices and enhanced rural spending?
I think it's really to be seen if the oil prices remain range bound. If they are within the current range, and let me assume that we are on the outer periphery of that range,
Yes.
I think then with the present taxation level, because the central taxes are all ad valorem. Central taxes are fixed, I'm sorry.
Yes.
The state taxes are ad valorem. So on the central taxes, I can afford to, the same amount will remain. So my
Yes.
revenues really won't be affected. But if it completely goes out of the roof, then it's a different.
Well, you've already done some discounting on taxation too.
We've already done some discounting, and I've already given one relief
Yes.
3 months ago, as far as the.
Okay, Hemendra Verma, the enhanced support on MSP is laudable, but I have two questions. Why the caveat that it is only for the next Kharif? Will it stop after that? And why did you not couple this with a significant outlay on modern storage, cold chain and material handling?
I think both the questions are extremely important, which the gentleman has put. No, it doesn't stop with Kharif. I think once this principle is laid down, this principle will be here to stay. And as far as the next item after I announce the MSP is concerned in my budget speech, I have actually said that we will need to have a system of MSP procurement if the prices fall. And then there is a chapter the paragraph that I have as far as the perishables, the potato, onion, tomatoes are concerned. And I have already sanctioned some amount in the budget for that with regard to the backward linkages and the cold chains are concerned. So that's a provision I have separately made in the
And
budget.
you've given some protection for food processing, I think.
I have also increased the, for food processing, I have increased the outlay from the government budget twice over and said that institutional finance will also be supplementing it.
Arsh Mogre, while bringing the land records on blockchain is a transformative step, what steps are being taken to ensure a sound strengthen its security and that of digital payments in general?
I think this is really a question more for our IT experts really to work out than for me to answer, because the iron walls around this system have to be as strong as possible.
Yes.
Now, whether somebody can still break into them, it's a matter of technology.
Yeah.
And I think with all the data storage and the data security issues will have to be dealt with by the IT experts.
Okay. Kapileshwar, I have only one question, which is that we expected a number of jobs would be announced in Indian Railways as being shown on different sites and newspapers. Is it all fake that, well, I won't name the newspaper, and that others are showing?
Well, I don't know, because it will depend on the railways as to what their requirements are. And I think with the kind of expansion of the railway infrastructure which is going on, 600 railway stations, the electrification of the railways, the infrastructure of the railways being added, this is some area certainly which will require jobs, because retirements also take place in the railways. So obviously the recruitment.
But I have a question. You put in massive sums into the railways over the last 4 years. When do we see the results in terms of increased average speeds, greater safety? So far it doesn't show.
Well, I think you probably have a valid point. You see, the rural roads, the highways, the airports, I think these are all visible improvements in the infrastructure which have taken place. Railways will take some time, and I think railways on these locomotive plants, etc., it is visible. I think when you start seeing the first 5 or 10 railway stations redone, I think it's only then that you'll get a feeling that the infrastructure improvement in the railways as we've planned, which is taking place. And of course, the track strengthening.
And the speeds, our trains are still our express trains are at 70
Some of the new
kilometers
ones have started moving faster, because they're getting trains now moving at about 160 kilometers.
Okay, Bharat Kumar K. Maybe the working class is not a vote bank for any political parties, but there is something called humanity as well, that the very people who contribute to the salaries of all MPs, MLAs, government officials and national schemes are rarely included in any schemes and benefit.
Well, I think when you improve infrastructure, the people of India benefit, the middle class of India benefits. When you improve the quality of education, when you improve the quality of healthcare, when you improve the quality of highways, these are the classes which benefit. When you improve the quality of airlines, they benefit. But at the same time, in an answer to an earlier question, I have given a whole package of the tax reliefs that I have given to the middle class in the last 4 budgets.
Yeah. Anish Ramachandran, what are the pro-women measures included in this budget?
Oh, well, you see, there are special provisions with regard to women employees and their contribution to the Provident Fund, which has been reduced. Sectors like garments, apparel, we have seen a huge amount where majority of the employees are women.
Yes.
These are the sectors for which I have sanctioned 7,000 crores this year, and I had sanctioned 6,000 crores earlier.
And it's worked, I think.
And I think it's well worth it, because apparel, you can see the employment coming almost instantaneously in these areas. And I think these are all measures which can be seen in the budget itself.
Saurabh, why is there only 3 to 4% of the population paying tax? This seems there are more tax evaders. What is your plan to track them?
I think this impression needs to be corrected.
Absolutely.
Because it's a popular impression that out of 130 crore people, only a few crore pay taxes. There are broadly about 25 crore families in India. You have people in the agriculture sector, which is tax-free. You have below poverty line, which obviously can't pay tax. And there are people below the taxation limit. So how many rest are left? And today I have given a figure that between those filing returns and those who I have brought in through the TDS network into the tax net, the figure I have already taken to about 8.25 crores.
Yes.
Now, if 8.25 crores, if somebody had asked me a few years earlier, can you reach a figure of 10 crores? Because that could be somewhere the optimum figure that you can reach in India. I would have doubted my capacity. Today, it looks within a reasonable distance.
But a lot of those who file returns don't pay any tax.
You see, a lot of people file returns, they pay either nothing or negligible. But it's become possible to trace their incomes. And once you are able to trace them, then certainly if there is any element of evasion, it can be traced out. And after the GST, I think there are 2 impacts. One is that your real income becomes apparent.
Yes.
And the second is that what a lot of business people have saved through the GST, their actual incomes have gone up. So the corporate tax collection went up.
Correct.
In the quarter immediately after GST.
Yeah. Okay, this is from Quick. Sir, what is the benefits given to micro and small industries, as we feel no benefits is given?
Well, I think it's extremely important if we see. The industries are predominantly dealing with indirect taxes. And indirect tax in India is now substantially the GST. Now, if you look at the entire GST package to micro and small, which we've now agreed to increase the limit up to 1.5 crores turnover, you have a composition scheme where you pay 1% tax.
Yes.
So you can have a micro industry in India pay 1% tax, and that 1% tax itself may be sufficient. And therefore, that's a huge tax advantage which has been given. Additionally, if you are structured as a company, then instead of paying the normal corporate tax of 30%, for all companies up to 250 crores, I have brought down the limit down to 25%.
Yes. Yeah. Prashant Ladwa, my question is, there is hype in social media that this budget is against the middle class. Please convince us by counting the benefits for the middle class in today's budget.
Well, I think, as I've said, any form of expenditure which takes place on education, healthcare, infrastructure, helps the middle class. And I have already given a series of tax concessions in the last 4 to 5 budgets that I have given. There has not been a single budget that I have presented where either I have not altered the slab or altered the quantum of deduction which is available to the taxpayer. Virtually, you have a situation where you have, as I said, a 5 to 7 lakh income. You can get away with a very small amount of tax.
Okay, this is Dhirendra Pandey. As government announced to reduce the income tax slab for companies from 30% to 25% up to a turnover of 250 crore, there should be relief for individual salaries up to 5 lakh.
Well, those who have a salary up to 5 lakh rupees, only last year I have reduced their slab to 5%. So
Yes.
why do they want to be bracketed with companies up to 25%? And 5%, mind you, is the lowest slab in the world.
Yes. Aksh Jetlia. Sir, you have invested enough for the IITs, IIMs and medical colleges. But what about simple universities who are suffering from lack of money as well as teachers?
Well, I think except the central universities, which we are effectively supporting, and I think the central universities by and large are doing all right. There are state universities, and I do hope the states, particularly after the 14th Finance Commission, have a lot of funds available to them, and supporting education and higher education in the states is one of the functions there also.
Okay. Arsh Mogre, I thought there was a question from him earlier also. By cutting spending on the Swachh Bharat scheme, viewed as one of the most significant schemes of the government, will this account for lower basic and primary health care
Not
spending?
in the least, because you see, Swachh Bharat, not only we are spending as a government, I think this has been adopted by the whole country as a national program. A lot of companies are doing a very effective CSR as far as Swachh Bharat is concerned. And therefore, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. What was 36% on 2nd October 2014, today in 2018 is already 76% the toilet percentage. And I think more districts, more villages are becoming open defecation free. And this year I have provided for construction of 2 crore more toilets.
Okay. Sumit Dubey, are you going to add 1.5 times in production cost or only multiply 1.5 times
No,
production
this means
cost?
if 100 is the cost, the farmer gets 150.
50. Sudarshan Dravid, there are about more than 15 states in India which have their own languages. If you deliver the budget in Hindi for the benefit of rural people to understand, then why don't you deliver it in all the other languages to each and every citizen?
Well, I wish I had that ability, but I can tell you translated copies in various languages are always available.
Abraham Vimalan.
And I made it a point this year to...
Today you did actually bilingual for the
I
first time.
did a bilingual delivery of the budget for the first time.
First time, yes. When will this budget going to achieve the target? Definitely not in a year or so. Why limit 50,000 hospitals? Why not 50 lakh hospitals, but with ward boys for surgery? I don't know what that is.
I think if one is to make a serious response to this, if you are providing access to hospital to 500 million people, then obviously this is there are two sectors you are straight away encouraging. You are encouraging insurance, you are encouraging healthcare. So this should see more insurance business, this should see more hospitals in India to come up. The capacity itself, in the first instance, the vacant capacity on the hospitals will be exhausted. And then of course, if you universalize this scheme, you will probably see more hospitals in India.
But I have a question. How do you prevent malpractice? These private hospitals, they have a very patchy record. So
But I think the regulatory mechanism on a scheme like this will have to be very strict. And therefore...
because even in the existing medical insurance scheme, People who've done surveys show there's needless cesarean
the
sections.
existing medical insurance scheme, as far as you mean people who have self-insured themselves?
Yes.
Well, I think that's a question of
No, even government insurance scheme. There is, there are.
Well, also don't forget, budget is not the only thing through which we are struggling to bring in a kind of a change in the medical scenario in the country. There is a separate legislation we brought, which is finding resistance, where we want to bring in a lot of ethics into the medical education and the medical fraternity itself.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Raja T. When GST got introduced, all manufacturers, wholesalers, industries, etc., revisited the MRP, the maximum retail price of products and services, and it was significantly increased. After the GST is reduced, how many of them have reduced the prices? You are making them make more and more profit.
No, that's not correct. I think in the organized sector, most of the players in the organized sectors actually brought their prices down if the GST rates were reduced. Now, we put up an anti-profiteering authority in place with the hope that we won't have to act and people will, it'll have a deterrent
But
effect.
it's been flooded with cases.
It's been flooded with cases, and I've now seen the deterrent effect of this. The Hindustan Lever case is the first one of its kind, where people have voluntarily come up and deposited the money saying we made this extra profit because of GST and therefore we are depositing it. There was also the case of the restaurant industry.
Yes.
And I think the questioner probably would be right when it came to the restaurant industry, which increased the price by adding GST to the existing price without giving the benefit of the input costs to the consumers. And therefore, we denied to them in the very next meeting the benefit of the input costs. And we suddenly brought down the rate from 18% to 5% and gave our consumers the relief.
Yeah. Sandeep Bhatnagar is Raria. Mr. Arun Ji, what do you think about products that are selling without bills? There is not one seller, there are huge numbers of it. So how do you think to track these items selling?
I think the question is a very valid one. You see, GST so far was voluntary compliance, because there was an initial resistance in some circles and therefore we didn't really want to press the accelerator at that stage. We have now rationalized the rates, and therefore the GST by and large by the business community has been welcome. Now is the time to make sure that anti-evasion doesn't take place. The first step in the anti-evasion was that you had parallel trucks moving in the country with goods for which tax was not paid. And therefore, this was unfair competition. There are two sets of sellers, one who's paid tax and one who hasn't paid tax. And therefore, the law-abiding businessman had his own complaint. So, with effect from today, 1st of February, we have the e-way bill now which has been put into operation. And 13 states have even started an intra-state e-way bill with effect from today. And all others by the 1st of June will have it in place. We have one or two other anti-evasion steps in mind, and we therefore want to see gradually move with those anti-evasion measures and see what the impact is going to be.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. I'll take Devendra Shrimal. Considering reduced export incentives post GST, Indian exporters are becoming outpriced internationally compared to other countries. How will your budget support exporters?
No, I think the GST management is outside the budget itself, and therefore whatever has to be done in terms of GST, so that for instance, we decided in one of the GST meetings the benefit to the merchant exporters to be so that only to keep traceability they only pay 0.1%.
Yes.
Because you don't export taxes, so the merchant exporters have benefited. The refund system on the electronic system has still not come into operation, so manually we are trying to verify and return. There are a lot of anomalies in that, but that's being expedited. I took a meeting yesterday itself to make sure that people get the benefits, and we don't want the exports itself to suffer. And I'm glad in the last few months exports have actually started picking up once again.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Minister, I think our time is up. So I'll have to wind this up. Thank you very much for taking viewers' questions, and a large number of questions did get taken. I'm sure you elaborated on a lot of answers which helped them. So thank you very much once again. Congratulations on your 5th budget, and thank you viewers for watching and for taking part. Good night.